Hey everybody, so for assignment 2D, we assume the role of an owner of a manufacturing company with about 200 people at our employ, and we've been given some questions as to what we would do under some specific circumstances. So first, we are talking about internet privacy with different employees. As for internet privacy, we talked in class about how people are generally happier if they have access to things like Facebook and their social media. And for that reason, I would not follow or monitor which web pages my employees are going to. What I would do is place internet filters, so obviously my employees aren't looking at porn or anything like that, but as for monitoring their internet activities, I feel as though the invasion of privacy would create sort of an uncomfortable atmosphere, and I would rather leave it to their discretion to use the computers in a responsible way. And if they're not, then probably need to look into hiring the right kind of people who will stay on track. So I would definitely put on filters so that there's nothing inappropriate going on, but I would leave it to their own discretion to visit their social media or things like that. And if it started to affect their performance, if they weren't getting things done on time because of it, I would look at that more of their own responsibility than my fault for not monitoring them. And I would probably need to look into hiring more ambitious or motivated people who aren't going to slack off at the computer. As for the drug test scenario, so that's all for the computers. As for emails, as a side note, I would not monitor their emails. I would monitor their web pages before monitoring their emails. That, to me, is a big invasion of privacy, even if it's talking about things that are professional in nature. I wouldn't agree with doing that. Filters, definitely. So as for the drug test scenario, let's say that you monitor a third of the computers and all come back with positive drug tests. I wouldn't take that at face value. If a third of my employees all came back drug positive, I don't know if I would want to check the validity of those tests for sure to make sure that they were correct or there wasn't some sort of error. But I would do a random drug test anyway, and here's why. If it's a manufacturing facility, there are probably going to be machines involved that will require safety precautions, and the drug tests are a way of managing risks. It could be looked at as an invasion of privacy, but it's a justified one because if heavy machinery is being operated and people are using drugs too, that poses a huge risk to the company. If this was a simple office setting and there wasn't any manufacturing involved, I probably wouldn't do the drug tests. I wouldn't really take the keyboard swab very seriously. I would prefer just to do like a random drug test anytime, once a year, and that's just for risk management because people can't be operating machinery at a manufacturing facility on drugs, and that's understandable from a business perspective. I think both as the employee and the employer. Surely there would be costs involved with doing that, but again, the costs that you're saving in risk management are going to be much more beneficial than something that could potentially happen down the line where there could be an accident and there's possible liability involved as well. With those who fail, I would probably put them on some sort of suspension or enforce some sort of penalty. I would not have a zero tolerance for drugs. I would probably do like maybe like a 3 strikes, or maybe just like a one-time thing where if they get caught, if they do it again, then they're out. I think it's a little harsh firing somebody right off the bat. But on the other hand, now that I think about it, if it is a manufacturing job and drugs become involved, it may be necessary to fire them. So I think what I would do personally if somebody was caught is I would enforce a penalty. I wouldn't fire them, but I would monitor them closely and probably give them a separate drug test from everybody else at a sooner date than annually, to just give them a random test to make sure nothing's going on. I think once people become suspect, then it becomes rational to give them a separate test. Now, if somebody self-identifies before the drug test, you got to send them to rehab. Otherwise, you could be sued. It's a liability problem as soon as they come to you and say that they're self-identifying. So send them to rehab immediately. And I think that's it for drugs. Now, as for a dress code, I think that in the actual shop, this is a manufacturing facility, in the shop, yes, a dress code for safety reasons. Jeans, steel-toed boots, things of that nature. Otherwise, it could pose a safety penalty, and that's just going back to risk management. Enforcing a dress code in a manufacturing facility is very important for safety, so that would be a must. As for those who work outside of the shop in maybe an office setting, I think business casual is perfectly fine. I don't see any point in enforcing any crazy dress policies as long as they look professional. If they come in their pajamas, that's very unprofessional and might be worth sending them home for. But otherwise, in the shop, yes, for safety precautions. Otherwise, just business casual seems fine. As for allowing religion and politics to be discussed, I don't see any problem with that. Maybe during the breaks or during lunch hour, but if it's on the clock, I think that conversations should be limited to being mostly about work. I don't think that penalties should be enforced for people just talking about their beliefs, but it would definitely be worth monitoring people just to make sure they're staying on task. And that's not just with politics and religion, that's with really anything that could distract your employees from being efficient. So I don't see it as a huge problem as long as people aren't getting in fights or anything like that. Just as long as it's being kept to designated break times and things of that nature. Otherwise, it becomes a problem with just workplace efficiency in general. If people are just, talking instead of focusing on work. If somebody identifies as gender neutral, This is a tough one. Um, I think that it depends on what state you're in. Um, I think that if somebody identifies as gender neutral, they should probably have the right to use the other bathroom, but there could be other consequences with that as well. If there's no family restroom, if there's no general restroom, um, I would say that it's probably up to them according to the laws of whatever state they're in. Here in North Carolina, I don't think you're protected for being gender neutral and going into another bathroom. So, um, simply for legal reasons, I might not allow it here because that could create liability problems if somebody were to become uncomfortable or something like that. So, I think that's kind of a gray area, but um, I would certainly like to allow anybody to use a bathroom of their choice. And although it would be nice to install gender neutral bathrooms in every facility, it would be far too costly. So I think it's just best to look at um, individual state laws and go from there. So with that, I think that considering that it's a manufacturing facility, there's a lot of safety precautions that have to be recognized with, drug tests, and dress codes, and things of that nature. And as long as those are being followed, I don't think that people's privacy should be infringed too much, or that creates a negative atmosphere. And I think that having a positive atmosphere where everybody is happy to come into work is a very important thing. And as long as nobody is taking drugs or visiting inappropriate websites, then I think that should be just fine. Thank you.